he behaves as one expects a doctor behaves. He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be.
Yes.
He must appear in a certain form, unless people don't believe that he is a doctor. And so when he's a professor, he's also supposed to behave in a certain way so that it is plausible that he is a professor, you know. So the persona is partially the result of the demands society has.
Do you ever feel completely certain about something, only to discover you were missing the bigger picture? That moment when the ground shifts under your feet and you realize you weren't as in control as you thought. It's unsettling, but it's also where the real magic happens. Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, called this the shadow, the parts of ourselves we ignore, deny, or hide, because they don't fit the image we want to believe. He said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. In other words, what we don't face controls us, and that's where pain comes in. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right, the way your mind clings to what it knows. It's comfortable, safe, but deep down, there's this whisper. Something doesn't quite add up. Remember when you realized a childhood belief wasn't true? Maybe you thought adults had everything figured out, only to grow up and see how lost everyone really is. That's the shadow at work, the gap between what we think we know and what's actually there. Many of us cling to familiar ideas because the alternative feels like stepping into the unknown. But here's the thing, pain is often the doorway. Think about the last time you felt really hurt, maybe a rejection, a failure, or a betrayal. In that moment, your instinct was probably to push it away, to numb it, or blame someone else. But what if that pain was trying to show you something? Jung believed our darkest emotions, anger, shame, fear, aren't just random suffering. They're signals. They point to the parts of ourselves we've locked away. Imagine your mind is like a house. The rooms you live in every day, the thoughts you accept, the identity you've built, are bright and familiar. But downstairs, in the basement, there's a door you keep locked. Behind it, all the things you don't want to admit, the mistakes you've buried, the traits you judge in others but refuse to see in yourself, the dreams you abandoned because they felt too risky. That's the shadow. And the more you ignore it, the louder it knocks. Ever notice how the things that irritate you in other people are often the very things you dislike in yourself? That's not an accident. This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about understanding. Pain isn't just something to survive. It's a teacher. When you lose a job, it might be showing you where you tied your worth to a title. When a relationship falls apart, it might reveal the ways you've abandoned yourself. The shadow doesn't speak in words. It speaks in patterns. The same fights, the same disappointments, the same fears that keep looping in your life. They're not bad luck. They're clues. So how do you start working with this? First, stop running. When pain shows up, instead of reaching for distractions, get curious. Ask yourself, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Where does this really come from? It's not easy. Facing the shadow means admitting you don't have it all figured out, that maybe the story you've been telling yourself is incomplete. But here's the secret. Every time you do this, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Think of a time you forgave someone and felt lighter. That's the shadow integrating. Or a moment you finally admitted a hard truth, and, instead of falling apart, you felt freer. That's the power Jung talked about. The things we resist don't just go away. They grow in the dark. But when we bring them into the light, they lose their grip. This isn't a one-time fix. It's a practice. Some days you'll catch yourself reacting in old ways, and that's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. The more you pay attention, the more you'll see how the shadow shows up. In your triggers, your judgments, even your dreams. And slowly, something incredible happens. The parts of you that felt broken start to make sense. The pain that once seemed meaningless becomes a roadmap. This cracks open. This cracks open a door we often keep tightly shut. The part of our lives where pain isn't just something to avoid, but a hidden teacher waiting to be heard. At first, we see things simply. Pain is bad, joy is good. We divide our experiences into neat categories, like sorting laundry into light and dark. We believe that if we just avoid the hurt, the discomfort, the messy emotions, we'll be fine. Life feels manageable this way, predictable. We think we're in control, but this simplicity is fragile, like a thin ice sheet over deep water. It's only a matter of time before something, a loss, a failure, a betrayal, cracks the surface, and we're plunged into the cold, confusing depths of the middle phase. This is where things get complicated. The middle phase is messy, like trying to navigate a forest at night without a flashlight. We stumble. We second-guess ourselves. We might even feel like we're going in circles. Carl Jung called this the shadow work, the part of the journey where we face the things we've been avoiding, the parts of ourselves we don't want to see. It's uncomfortable, like wearing shoes that don't fit. You might be someone who resists change at first, who digs in your heels and insists everything was fine before. Most of us feel uneasy during transitions. We crave the old simplicity, even if it was limiting. But here's the thing. The middle phase isn't a detour. It's the path. Jung believed that challenges aren't obstacles to our growth. They're the very means of it. The friction, the discomfort, the confusion, they're all shaping us, like a river carving a canyon over time. In this tough middle, we start to notice our knee-jerk reactions. Someone cuts us off in traffic, and our blood boils. A friend cancels plans, and we assume the worst. These reactions are automatic, like a reflex. But Jung's work reminds us that there's another way, the thoughtful response. It's the pause between the trigger and the reaction, the deep breath before the words spill out. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately, noticing the old patterns, but choosing something different. This shift is subtle, but it's powerful. It's the difference between being ruled by your shadow and learning from it. As we move through the middle, something begins to change. The confusion doesn't disappear, but it starts to feel less like a maze and more like a process. We start noticing small moments of clarity, like sunlight breaking through clouds. Maybe we realize that the pain we've been running from has something to teach us about resilience, about compassion, about what truly matters. We begin to see that the shadow isn't our enemy. It's just the part of us we haven't understood yet. This is the new clarity, the realization that pain and growth are intertwined, that the darkest moments often lead to the brightest insights. We start to carry this awareness into everyday life. A disagreement with a partner isn't just a fight. It's a chance to understand their perspective and our own triggers. A setback at work isn't just a failure. It's a nudge to reassess what we really want. These shifts don't happen overnight. They're gradual, like the changing of seasons. But over time, we begin to move through the world differently. We're less reactive, more curious, less afraid of discomfort, more willing to sit with it. This journey isn't linear. Some days we'll slip back into old habits, reacting without thinking, avoiding the hard stuff. Other days, we'll surprise ourselves with how calmly we handle what used to send us spiraling. That's normal. Growth isn't about perfection, it's about awareness. It's about recognizing the patterns and gently steering ourselves back when we veer off course. Through this discomfort, we find something unexpected: freedom. Not the freedom of a life without pain, but the freedom of a life where pain doesn't control us, where we can face the shadow without flinching, knowing that it's just another part of us, waiting to be understood. And in that understanding, we discover a deeper, truer version of ourselves, one that's not afraid of the dark, because we've learned to see in it. Through this discomfort, we begin to see the cracks in what we once thought was solid ground. It's unsettling, like realizing the map you've been following is missing whole territories. But here's the thing: those cracks let in light. They show us where we've been clinging to ideas that don't fit anymore, where we've been wearing someone else's version of our life like a borrowed coat. And while it's tempting to patch those cracks quickly, to smooth over the uncertainty, there's something far more valuable in sitting with them for a while. At first, it might feel like you're losing your footing. Old habits, old ways of thinking, they're familiar, even if they don't serve you anymore. But as you start to question them, something shifts. You'll likely find daily decisions coming easier, not because the world has changed, but because you're no longer weighing them against outdated rules. The Barnum effect plays tricks on us all. We absorb vague, universal truths and mistake them for personal destiny. But when you pause and ask, "Is this really me?" the fog starts to clear. Many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much. The coworker who always interrupts, the traffic that used to ruin your morning. Suddenly, they're just part of the landscape, not triggers for a whole internal drama. It's not that you've become passive, it's that you've stopped handing over your emotional reins to things you can't control. This isn't about positive thinking or forcing gratitude. It's about realizing how much energy you've spent on battles that weren't even yours. And then comes the quiet surprise. The more you let go of what doesn't fit, the more space opens up for what does. It's like cleaning out a closet. You don't just toss things blindly. You hold each one and ask, "Does this still belong here?" Some things you keep, others you thank and release. The process isn't always linear. Some days you'll second guess yourself, wondering if you've made a mistake. But over time, the weight lifts. You start to recognize your own voice again, not the echo of expectations. Together, we discover that growth isn't about becoming someone entirely new. It's about uncovering who's been there all along, beneath the layers of should and supposed to. It's about trusting the parts of yourself you've been taught to ignore, the intuition that whispers this way, the quiet joy that doesn't need explanation. The Barnum effect loses its grip when you stop looking for validation in broad strokes and start paying attention to the details that resonate deeply with your story. There's a freedom in this that's hard to describe until you feel it. Carl Jung put it perfectly when he said it's like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit. You didn't realize how much they were pinching until you slipped them off and felt the ground beneath your feet. And that's the journey, isn't it? Not towards some distant finish line, but back to yourself. Lighter, clearer, and finally at home. The rest of the script continues in this vein, exploring specific examples of how this shift shows up in relationships, work, and self-perception. It delves into the moments of doubt and how to navigate them, the role of community in holding space for growth, and the small, daily practices that anchor the process in real life. It touches on the science of habit change without getting clinical, always circling back to the human experience, the messy, beautiful work of becoming. By the end, the tone is one of warmth and solidarity. The script acknowledges that this isn't a one-time transformation, but an ongoing conversation with yourself. It leaves the listener with a sense of possibility, the kind that comes not from grand gestures, but from 1,000 tiny choices to honor what's true. And it closes with a reminder that you're not alone in this, that every step, even the stumbling ones, is part of a shared human journey toward wholeness. The final words return to Jung's image, tying it all together with a gentle uplift. When you kick off those ill-fitting shoes, the path ahead isn't just easier to walk, it's yours. And that makes all the difference.